Thank you very much for this part. Now we can go for the third part. How to like best way to start for reading scientific paper because us our student from bachelor or master even we don't have like much addiction to read a scientific paper. For I talk about myself when I went to China, so I started to read first time scientific paper there. Before in my country I didn't read. So what is the best way to start to read the scientific paper? First abstract, conclusion, or what do you think?
So, first of all, you should be reading. Everybody should be reading. I mean, if you're an academic and a scholar, you have to read. That's the beginning of any way of capturing knowledge. I see behind you a beautiful library there, so I hope you read all those books. But we should all be reading all the time, right? So I would say I spend maybe half of my life reading, half
Okay.
of my sort of awake life, reading. I think we never read, we don't read enough. So the saying goes, one paper a day keeps the supervisor away. So all of you should be reading at least one paper a day. Now, how do you read? That's a very interesting point. I don't like this idea of having a protocol of you read the abstract, you read the figures, you read the results, whatever. The most important thing is that you read. And the most important thing is, and for instance, I mean, let me diverge a little bit here. For example, these days, there's a new kind of format, which is the Twitter thread.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually where I read most of the papers I read come through social media and reading these X or Twitter paper threads. When people publish papers, often now they write a summary and they have a thread of posts about it, social media
Mm-hmm.
posts. I love reading those because they allow me to actually get exposed to papers outside my immediate field. And in those cases, I don't need to know more than what's in the paper thread. For instance, there is recently, maybe yesterday, there was a Twitter thread about a paper where in David Baker's lab in the US, they built synthetic on-off switches. And I read the thread, and it was interesting. It was based on, I think, interleukin receptors. I got a general idea of that, but I didn't go to read the full paper because that's the information I have now ingrained in my mind that these guys managed to do this. If one day I want to get more information about that, hopefully it will pop up in my memory and I will go and seek it, right? So I got the information that was sufficient for me for that kind of knowledge. But in other papers, of course, you want to go and get deeper. But what's most important about reading papers and about everything really you do is critical thinking. You have to develop critical thinking skills. So what's most important is actually to be able to analyze what you're reading, not just reading, but also analyze it. So for instance, can you detect whether an experiment is properly conducted or missing a control? Don't trust that because it's published in a journal is all good and everything. So that's something that you really need to engage in with your colleagues, maybe with people who have more expertise. If something you're not convinced about, go seek some expertise. Maybe go even read about the journals where they publish the reviews. I mean, now many journals publish reviews. There's a platform called Papier where people also publish reviews of published articles. So what's more important in parallel with reading is developing the capacity of critical thinking and making your own mind and your own opinion about the scientific literature because there's a lot of bad stuff out there.
Yeah. So for if the student is like in a new journey, so how they can dig into the proposal? Like if you have a topic, how he can dig into that? Like to start first to start reading review paper or just to focus on the research article.
A combination of both, but maybe what's maybe important is to connect with other students.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, do journal clubs to
Mm-hmm.
develop critical thinking. Again, it's most important here is not again review article or research paper or even a Twitter post or whatever or preprints or so on.
Mm-hmm.
What's important is your own critical thinking, your own critical mind. What do you make of the research that you're reading about? What is your own personal opinion? And the way to shape that is to build confidence about that is to connect with other scientists. So try to read, try to talk to other students, maybe your professors, Ask them about particular paper, things that bother you, etc. So journal clubs, I mean, these days there's also these preprint review clubs that people do. Feel free to do that. So organize yourself among yourself. And I think, in my opinion, I think actually even the teaching should incorporate more of that these days, rather than just focusing on just pure sort of, here's the knowledge. Is more like, okay, what do you think of this information? You can even ask ChatGPT to help you, or one of these LLMs to help you analyze some of this data and identify what is wrong with the published literature.